Okay, well, here's the Chapter 7 practice test, and we'll go through each of the problems and show you how each of those do work, and remind you of what the details behind them are. So first of all, let's look at problem number 1. I'm going to make it a little bigger here. There we go. All right. So we're supposed to find two ratios equivalent to each of these numbers. So our first number is 5/10, right? So we got 5/10, which if we go ahead and just write that out, 5/10, let's make that a little smaller. There we go. Okay, 5/10 equals, well, if we notice that 5/10 is just 1/2. And why is it a half? Because the greatest common factor between the two is 5. So if I divide by 5 and divide by 5, I'm going to equal 1/2. So there's one ratio, or in other words, fraction, that is equal to 5/10. Okay, so that's the first way of doing it. You can simplify. And the second way I'm going to show you is you're just going to double it. And there's other ways to do it. In other words, you just have to create new fractions or new ratios that have the same value as 5/10. And that means that it'll have the same value as 1/2 or 1/2. And if I double it, let's start with my 5/10 again. And I'm going to double it. So I'm going to multiply the bottom and the top by 2. 5 times 2 is 10. 10 times 2 is 20. So there we have a second ratio or fraction that is equivalent to 5/10. The other thing you can do is just simply recognize that you got 1/2, and you could just say, well, I always need to be at the halfway point, so 1/2 is also equal to 2/4, which is equal to 3/6, and this is just my knowledge of fractions, that if I make the bottom number twice as big as the top number, they're always going to simplify down to 1/2. And so I could use any of these numbers here for this answer. Okay, so you're only supposed to come up with 2, and we did. 1/2 is equivalent to 5/10, and 10/20 is equivalent to 5/10. But you could have used any number of other fractions. So now let's try 4/6. Well, the greatest common factor between those two is 2. Okay, 2 is the largest number that divides into both of them evenly. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 2. And 4 divided by 2 is 2 on the top, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So now I have 2/3. Now I'm going to follow that's the simplify method of finding an equivalent fraction. Now let's try the double method. So 4/6, I'm going to times 2 times 2, and that gives me 8/12. Okay, I also, just with my general knowledge of fractions, if I start at 2/3, I know that 2/3, I could just add 2/3 each time. 4/6, which was my original number, I'm going to say equals there, not times, equal. And then I could go 6/9, and then I could go 8/12, and then I could go 10/15, and so on, so on. I could do that forever. So here's some other numbers I could use. And that's how you find ratios equivalent to a ratio you're given or a fraction that you're given. Let's move over to see if these ratios here do these ratios form a proportion? Well, to do that, you can do it one of two ways. The first way I'm going to show you is you could simplify and see if they simplify to the same thing. Well, to simplify this, I can see I can divide the top by 4 and the bottom by 4. And 4/12 simplifies down to 1/3. And then I look at that simplifies it, so it is as simplified as it gets. And those two values are not equal, thus it's not a proportion. Now the second way you can do it is you can do cross multiplication. So let's do that with the second problem. 1/3, you just set them equal. They're asking, are they a proportion? So you set the two ratios, two fractions, equal to each other. And if the ratios, if they are proportional, then the cross products must equal each other. So cross products here is 2 times 3 equals, and then this way, 1 times 6. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. 1 times 6 is 6. Since they're equal, it's a proportion. Okay, so I can do it either way. I can simplify both numbers to see if they simplify to the same fraction, or I can just do cross multiplication. I almost always do cross multiplication. It's typically the faster method, unless you have simple fractions. All right, let's go on to number 3 here. And number 3, we're supposed to find the unit price for each. Well, if you remember a unit price, okay, that means you got to have price over a single unit. Okay, so in all these problems, when they're asking you for a unit price, they're going to have a price somewhere, in this case $3.80, and they're going to have an amount of a with a label or a unit of measure on it. So let's put the dollar figure on the top, 380. We can write it as a decimal or as a numeric number or a dollar figure, and then we put the number on the bottom, 20 ounces. So when you just divide that out, you're going to get what's the cost. Let me get that out of there. And what is the cost? 380 divided by 20 is, let me look at my paper here that I've done all the work on already. 380 divided by 20 is equal to, let's get that color again. That's going to be 19 cents. 19 cents per ounce. So you notice that nothing canceled out. I still have dollars on the top and ounces on the bottom. But I have a unit price because the unit of ounces is 1 ounce. Remember, for a unit rate or a unit price, you always have to have the number on the bottom of your fraction to be a measure of 1. Okay, so let's try the next one. We got 15 ounces this time and 315. So let's put 315 and let's ignore the labels this time because we know what we're going to end up with. And we say 315 because that's our dollar figure from up here. Always goes on the top. And our unit is down below. So there's 15 units. We got to get it to 1 unit. So we do that with our division. And when you divide 315 by 15, you get, and I'll write it now with its labeling, you get 21 cents per ounce. All right, now number 4. Number 4, find the unit price of each and tell which is better deal. So now we've got to do 2 unit prices and compare which one is the better single unit price. So we've just learned how to do the unit price, so let's do this first one. 10 blank CDs, whoops, and $2.50. So we write $2.50 divided by 10, and we know that that comes out to be 25 cents per CD. So now we do the second one, which would be $3 total and 15 CDs. So $3 from right there and 15 CDs from right there. Okay, so when we divide that out, we end up with 20 cents per CD. So which one is the better deal? Well, it'll be the one that costs less per CD. So this guy right here is the deal. All right, now let's do the last problem here. What is the conversion factor for these three items? Well, if you remember, conversion factors always say, what are you starting from and what are you going to? When you want to start from kilometers and go to meters, you've got to know how many meters there are in a kilometer, okay? And you're always going to put the starting point on the bottom. So whenever you're doing a conversion factor, you make a fraction or a ratio. On the bottom goes 1 unit of the starting point. So that's kilometers. Okay, and then you need to know how many meters are in a kilometer. Well, I know that there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. And that right there is the correct answer for kilometers to meters conversion factor. Remember, conversion factor, you're not doing anything. You're just saying, what would I multiply by if I had a bunch of kilometers and I wanted to change them over to meters? So in B, we now say, what if I have a bunch of gallons and want to change them to quarts? Well, what am I going to do there? I'm going to first draw my line, which represents my fraction. And what do I put on the bottom? 1 unit of the starting point, gallons. So 1 unit of gallons. Now, how many quarts in a gallon? Well, I happen to know that there are 4, and quarts is QT. And there, that is the correct conversion factor for gallons to quarts. And finally, let's do feet to inches. Coming down here to C, feet to inches, so we're going to put 1 unit of feet on the bottom, FT. And we all know that there are 12 inches in a foot. And that is a conversion factor for feet to inches. All right, that's the end of this video.